everyone. I'm Amanda Miller. I'm the Communications Coordinator with the American Numismatic Association, and we are here at the Donald E. Stephens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois for the World's Fair of Money. And today I am with David McCarthy. We're at the museum showcase that's displayed here for everyone to come and see. And we are checking in with people to see what the coolest thing in their booth, or the coolest thing that they own are. So would you like to tell us what you have here?
Well, this is definitely one of the coolest things that I own. What we have here is basically a hub trial for the very first version of the Fujio cent. So the Fujio cent was a contract coinage that was struck pursuant to an act of Congress, so it's really the first circulating U.S. coin. And when they were in the process of figuring out what the design was going to be, the earliest design that was used for it was what they call the American Congress pattern. And if you've seen a Fujio cent, the front, the obverse, was basically the same as the Fujio cent that we know today. However, on the American Congress pattern, the reverse had the names of the states on all of the rings and had rays in the middle and said American Congress instead of United States. And only 3 of those coins are known today, but this is actually a trial of the pair of hubs that were used to make the dies for that coin. And so you basically have the earliest design for a circulating U.S. coin, the earliest strike, and it's basically the earliest prototype for a circulating U.S. coin.
And when did you end up getting this in your possession?
I purchased it. I must have purchased it 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it's a coin that was discovered in the 1850s and passed through some pretty serious collections, but wasn't really understood. When it was actually first discovered, no one had ever seen an American Congress pattern Fujio in the collecting community. I think the earliest one of those that popped up was sometime in the 1860s.
Okay.
So this turned up in the 1850s, ended up in the collection of a guy named Robert Colton Davis, who was a very, very serious collector of coins in Philadelphia, and was in his collection for a while, sold at auction, and then ended up being written about right around the turn of the century by Sylvester Crosby, who was sort of one of the first great scholars of U.S. coins. And Crosby, it's interesting to read the article because Crosby clearly understands that this is a trial of the hubs for the earliest Fujio cent, but just kind of can't believe what it is that he's got. And he writes this article in the American Journal of Numismatics, and the editor of the American Journal of Numismatics writes a postscript saying, well, yeah, this is clearly, the model for the first Fujio, says something along those lines. And the coin ended up in the collection of FCC Boyd, who was one of the great 20th century collectors, and then eventually ended up with me. But in the 20th century, it wasn't really understood exactly what it was, and it ended up being classified alongside some 19th century fantasy pieces that were made based upon the appearance of this object. In other words, if you look at what they call the Bushnell restrikes, the design is clearly based upon this, but clearly from dies that have no relationship to the hubs that struck this. And so when it came to me, it wasn't very well understood, and Kevin Vinton, who's another numismatic researcher, and I did a bunch of research, did photo overlays, compared the hub impression to the actual original American Congress patterns, and actually found design that's visible on this, that's visible underneath the design on the American Congress pattern. So it was a really fascinating experience, and at the end of the day, we were able to demonstrate that this is actually something that was probably struck between April and June of 1787, while the Company for Coining Coppers, which is the mint that struck the Fujio cents, was kind of getting up and running to do the Fujios.
Okay, so you were also in charge of kind of doing the research behind the coin.
I did some of the research. Kevin Vinton did some of the research. We discovered that there were prior researchers, one gentleman in the 1980s, and obviously Sylvester Crosby around the turn of the century, who'd essentially done the same research and concluded the same thing. But it was one of these things that just, it was kind of kicking around and not very well understood.
Very cool. Well, there you have it. This coin is on display here at the Museum Showcase at the World's Fair of Money at the Donald E. Stephens Convention Center, right here. Thank you
Awesome.
very much.
Thank you.